member lists, and we remind people to vote using signs throughout the town. This evening we are very fortunate to have Debbie Winnick to moderate our debate. Debbie is the Voter Service Chair of the League of Women Voters of Needham. She is a past president of the Needham League, as well as past board member of the State League of Massachusetts. She's a trained moderator, an elected member of the Needham Town Meeting, and a member of the Board of Directors of the Needham Youth Commission. Debbie.
Thank you. Please let us know if there's any problem hearing. I have a microphone here, and there's one microphone that will be passing amongst the candidates. Candidates, when you use the microphone, I've been told you want to make sure that you bring it right up to your speaking voice, and as you turn your head, the microphone should go with you. Otherwise, people will not be able to hear. Welcome to tonight's forum. I've been asked to give you some of the ground rules. So, to begin with, we have candidates tonight. We're beginning with the school committee race. There would have been a race, a forum for the Board of Selectmen, but unfortunately, Robert Sweeney was unable to attend tonight. There are two candidates for one seat for the Board of Selectmen. Robert Sweeney is unable to attend because of a death in the family. When we only have one candidate for a contested race, the League of Women Voters of the United States has a policy that we cancel the forum, or that piece of the forum, because that's considered an empty chair debate. It's an unfair advantage to one of the candidates, even if it's the last minute. So we're very sorry, but we hope there are other ways that you will find out about the two candidates for the Board of Selectmen. Tonight, I'd also like to introduce two candidates that are in the audience. Kathy Fagan, who is the other candidate for the Board of Selectmen, is in the audience. Kathy, can you stand? I'm standing in the back. Thank you. And then another race where we are not holding a forum tonight is for constable. There are 8 candidates running for constable for 4 seats. That means you'll be able to vote for 4 of the 8 candidates. In the audience, we have Justin O'Shea tonight, who is a candidate for constable. So we're going to begin with school committee tonight. We have timers sitting in the front row. The timers are there to help me as the moderator and to help the candidates. They have agreed on the format ahead of time. With each question asked, each candidate will be given 1.5 minutes to respond, and the timers will track that time and let us know with little signs to make sure that we stay on target. The most important piece of a League of Women Voters forum has always been and will continue to be fairness, as well as civility and respect. And we ask you to hold any applause or partisan remarks until the very end, and we hope you'll applaud all the candidates. And if I make a mistake, I hope somebody will alert me. We have league members in the front row, and they'll tell me if I missed a question, if we missed somebody in turn, because there's a lot to handle up here. So please let me know if you think I've missed somebody. So here's the format. There will be no opening statements by the candidates. The debate will consist of questions from the League of Women Voters and from you, the audience. In the audience are league members with cards and pencils. So if something triggers a question, please contact them, raise your hand, wave, or walk over and get a question card. If you would fill it out, it will then go to a committee. We have 2 people up front who are sorting those questions. The reason they're sorting them is to help me. They will make sure that they aren't duplications of something we already have. They'll make sure that they aren't that they're on topic and target, and they'll make sure that we can read them. So legibility really helps. Thank you. So questions will be in written form, sorted by the League of Women Voters, and presented by the moderator. The order in which candidates will answer questions is determined in advance. We've already pulled out of the hat. And I will randomly call on the candidates so that we have a different order for each question. Each candidate is going to be offered the same question. If the candidates feel that they need to respond after they've completed their they may ask me for a 30-second rebuttal. So each person has 1.5 minutes to answer the question. I've already mentioned the timekeepers. Occasionally a question may be addressed to one, or we prefer them to be addressed to all the candidates. That's the best way to compare candidates. If the question is specifically for one candidate and doesn't apply to the other candidates, please note that for us on the cards. Our sorters will take care of that as well. We still will always make sure that everybody has equal opportunity, and any candidate can request to answer that same question. At the end of the forum of each particular group of candidates, we'll have a minute for closing statements. The order of closing statements has been determined. It'll be the reverse order of our first question, and it's random. As I mentioned, the League does not sponsor or participate in an empty chair debate, and this is partly the ruling of the League of Women Voters of the United States, and it's because of FEC regulations, because this is being taped. No substitutions for candidates will be allowed, and no written statements by candidates to be read by others will be accepted. If a candidate does not participate in the forum, the moderator will announce that the candidate was invited but could not attend. We don't have that today. So, here we go. As I mentioned, Selectman, you've got 2 candidates for 1 seat, so make sure that when you are in the polls, you don't forget to vote for 1 member of the Board of Selectmen. And we're going to start with School Committee. We have 4 candidates for 2 positions for School Committee. School Committee consists of 6 members chosen at large by ballot from registered voters of Milton. Milton School Committee sets the policy for the Milton Public Schools. It sets performance standards and long-term goals. It also sets performance standards for itself. It is the trustee of local, state, and federal funds, and how they are allocated for use in the Milton Public Schools. The Milton School Committee employs qualified personnel to administer school system efficiently. We have 4 candidates: Glenn Havlicek, Margaret Eberhardt, Dennis Cohane, and Murray Regan. Excuse me, I'm very sorry, Regan. And I underline the E so I get it right. Here we go. The way to get started. All right, as I said, we pulled out of the hat, and let me get the questions. Oh, that's another piece of paper. There we go. Lots of papers. Okay, and the candidates have told me that they are fine with first names, so that's where we're going to go from here. Murray, first question. You're the first person to answer the first question. And this is, what changes would you support that would help Milton Public Schools meet the challenge of a decreasing budget? If the school budget decreases every year, what cuts would you propose and why? Microphone, please.
Good question. It's hard to answer when you don't have a budget in front of you. 85% of the budget is salaries, i.e. teachers, administrators, etc. So obviously it's a very difficult situation not only Milton is in, but communities across the state. As we all know, and as you pointed out, we're facing ever shrinking resources going forward for funding schools and town resources. Aside from cutting, I would advocate for, especially now that we're in a situation where the state has cut back mightily on its share of town resources, I would press the governor and the legislature to reverse that decision, to fully fund the community resources that we've enjoyed thus far. Obviously, again, I would have to look at the budget to make informed decisions, and since I don't have anything to look at, it's difficult
Okay, can you
to answer.
send that down the table? Glenn, you're the next person to answer the question.
Thank you. The issue when you're having decreasing budgets is not necessarily so much decreasing budgets, it's budgets that don't increase fast enough to keep up with inflationary costs. The school system's in a tricky position because a fair amount of its budget is forced upon us. I mean, we have obligations that we cannot alter. We have special education needs and a variety of different things that we just have to do in the law. We can't not do them by law. So it really makes your budget much tighter. It looks like we have a $33 million budget, but a good 9 or 10 million of it is almost enforced spending that you have no control over. So you have to be very careful about how you do it. What we're looking at now, in the last few years, we've had a good deal of success by bringing some, for instance, of the special education programs that we normally would send kids out of district to back in-house. We started a program for kids on the autism spectrum where we've hired some teachers to handle classes of 4 or 5 kids. We have two teachers in the classroom with 5 kids who have autism. But for instance, to send them out of district would cost us $80,000, $90,000, $100,000 a piece, so it's money well spent. So we look at ways of dealing with efficiencies. We're also looking, obviously, at things like electricity and utility costs and how we can conserve. And this year, where we have to make some cuts, we're trying to make cuts at administration levels rather than teaching levels.
Thank you. Dennis, the same question, please.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Absolutely. What changes would you support that would help Milton Public Schools meet the challenge of a decreasing budget? If the school budget decreases every year, what cuts would you propose and why?
Well, with a decreasing budget, the first thing that I would do is prioritize. I would have to list in order of importance what we absolutely have to keep and what could be taken off the table. An example last year was the spring sports. The spring sports was eliminated from the budget to the tune of about $90,000. And what happened was a few people, including myself and my wife, we orchestrated fundraisers, and within a few weeks we had raised well over the $90,000 that was needed. So first and foremost, we keep the teachers in the classroom, we keep the classroom size down. We could cut some administration, is what I think. If we had to cut some curriculum, I would absolutely go with some sports and push parents into self-fundraising to keep those sports financed.
Thank you. I'm just going to interrupt here for a second. Could everybody make sure their pagers and cell phones and iPods and iPads and tweeters and Blackberries and Blueberries and whatever berry you have is at least on vibrate or silent. Thank you. Okay, we're back to our questions. Margaret, the same question, please.
Okay. I would have to agree with what everyone here said, that the most important thing is to keep teachers in front of the kids and to try to keep class size down. I think that creative use of our resources is the way to go for the future, because when you think of ways to use resources wisely, when you collaborate with different departments, with different school districts, with the consolidated facilities that they're looking at, those are all ways to bring resources together. I think that Dennis hit on a very good point, that the way that the Milton Public Schools has worked with nonprofit organizations like the Milton Foundation for Education and other groups, that creates different opportunities that you can add to the budget. For instance, the Saturday morning program that was just started at the Peer School, that is for children that were struggling academically, and an enrichment program that didn't come from any taxpayer money and was a way to help supplement losses in the budget. And so I think that using resources in collaborative ways is another way, while you may have to cut the budget, that you can add things at the same time.
Thank you. The next question, we are going to begin with Dennis, so if you want to pick up that microphone. And you led us right into it. The next question is about the French immersion program. There's always debate about the French immersion program among parents and officials. What is your opinion of the program? What, if any, changes would you support to the language programs in Milton?
Well, we're probably looking at the biggest supporter of the French immersion in Milton. Our children went to Tucker Elementary and were in the French immersion right into the high school. And I have seen firsthand by going to France and going to Montreal and Quebec, the benefits of learning a second language. The biggest issue I have is that it's not promoted enough in Milton. That the parents of what we will call the English kids are misinformed as to the benefits of the French immersion. We have seen our children just blossom in it and all their friends, and it's wonderful to be able to take them places, and the confidence level that they have, knowing that they can go to different countries and be able to speak the native language is definitely a plus. And only 2 towns in the Commonwealth are doing this French immersion, and I'm very proud to be a huge supporter of it. I wouldn't change anything.
Thank you. Mary, the same question, please.
I have 2 children in the system, and they went through the English side of the school system. Thank you.
Sorry.
I think French immersion is a good idea, and if you talk to different people around town, half of them are for it and half of them are against it. And in many cases, it's ignorance of the issues and so forth. I wouldn't necessarily change anything, although I hear more and more people want their children to take this French immersion program, which apparently is putting pressure on the system as a whole. There's difficulty in finding teachers on first grade level that speak French. So while it's popular, there are issues. But again, I wouldn't change it. Thanks.
Margaret, you're next with this question, please.
I just spent from November until yesterday, working on the World Language Committee with a group of parents, administrators, and teachers. And it was a wonderful opportunity. We gave a report last night to the school committee, and it's online at the miltonps.org website. You can read the report and see the PowerPoint presentation that we made last night. I think it brought up some useful points. My children also did English. It's a wonderful program as well. The town bases itself on, the school system bases itself on French. It identifies itself as a town that offers this unique program. I would like to see, on the opposite side of that coin, Spanish put back into the English side of the equation in first grade. I think that we do have a large enrollment in French right now. Our first grade classes are at 28. That's a large enrollment. And there are issues surrounding finding certified elementary school teachers who speak French. Not necessarily those people who speak French, but those who are certified to teach elementary school as required by No Child Left Behind. So I think that when we took away Spanish in the first grade, that tipped the scales back. Because in a 21st century education, everyone wants language. It's important to everyone, whether you take French or whether you take Spanish. So I would like to see, although I know it costs money, I would like to see FLES come back. FLES is foreign language in the elementary school, Spanish in the first grade, and I think that will give parents 2 really great options for their children. And so that's how I feel.
Thank you. And Glenn, the same question, French immersion.
I also have 2 children in my public schools. They're both in college now, and I had one in French and one in English. And my son, who went through in French, is now a junior in college and studying in French in Avignon for his spring semester abroad as a junior in college. So I've seen the program firsthand. I think it's a wonderful program. My feeling about the program now, as it's been mentioned, there is a push of people in first grade into the French immersion program. We have more people choosing French in first grade than we've ever had before. I think the issue isn't so much French there, as it has been mentioned. We've lost a few things in the English program. I think we've lost not only foreign language early on, we've lost a certain amount of art and music throughout all of the early grades. And I think what's happened is people have looked at it and said, well, if you're not having art, you're not having music, you're not having French, Spanish, the only thing that's different in the first grade seems to be French. And I think that's pushing a choice towards the French. I think the way to balance the programs really isn't to change the French, but I think we have to look at putting some of the things back into the standard program that sort of equalize them a little bit, or give the appearance of equalizing them a little bit, whether it's art or music or Spanish in the first grade or whatever. But, I mean, those programs need a boost. And And so I think they're both great programs, but I think it's the perception at the moment that's pushing an inequality of enrollment.
Thank you. Just a reminder, make sure you hold up that microphone to your mouth. The next question doesn't need a timer at all. You guys have to sit back and relax. This is a yes or no question. The league doesn't really believe in yes or no questions because they really don't give us the information that we want to hear. However, this is a follow-up to the question we just asked, which gave us lots of information. So here's our yes or no question. And this was asked by the residents of Milton. Would you ever vote to abolish the French immersion program? Simple. Okay?
Who starts?
Who starts? Margaret, you start. Yes or no?
No.
Dennis, yes or no?
No.
Glenn, yes or no?
No.
Murray, yes or no?
No.
All right, Milton, you've heard it. I had a note, this must be asked. So clearly there was a request from the community to know where you all stand, and now we know. Now, timers, you back on duty? Back on duty. Here we go. The next question, Glenn, you go first. And here it is. The Milton Public School budget is always tight with over 500 employees and 4,000 students. How would you advocate for the schools getting their fair share of the available funds from the warrant committee and the town meeting each year?
That supposes that we don't get our fair share. The issue is, I don't think that we're losing money at the expense of other departments. I think the issue is the town as a whole doesn't have enough revenue to do all the various different things it wants to do, whether it's the schools, the fire department, public works. Pick your favorite department or your least favorite department. It really doesn't matter. The fact of the matter is we have a revenue issue in this town. It's been alluded to that state aid has been going down the last few years. We've lost all sorts of revenue in this in the current downturn. And so the issue, I don't think, is that any department is being advantaged over another department. I think the issue is just there isn't enough money to go around. And I don't think it's the question almost seems to blame the warrant committee. As a former warrant committee chair, I'm not going to take that. I think the issue is an issue of overall town problem. I think that the departments have worked very well the last few years to try to avoid even the appearance that we're fighting about who gets what. I don't want to sit as a school committee member and saying the police shouldn't get this, or the fire shouldn't get this, or DPW shouldn't get this, because that's not fair. I mean, we're all in this together as a town. So I think the issue is we have to look at ways to get our fair share, not from other departments, but from the state. We've cut our revenues for a while, and from other sources as best we can.
Thank you. Margaret, you're next. Same question, please.
I would have to agree with Glenn that I think that we do get a good share of the budget. I think the warrant committee reviews all the information provided in by the superintendent and school committee and has demonstrated a willingness to work with the schools to fund as much of the budget they can with limited resources. And I think that's really just the ultimate problem. I think the best way to advocate for the schools is to be as transparent as you can be about the budget, how you use it, what it's used for, what other revenue sources you get from the federal government and the state government, as the superintendent has been doing, and to work as a town together for the best solutions we can for all of our departments, given our limited resources.
Thank you. Murray. Move it down this way, please.
Again, I agree with everything that's been said. Transparency is, I think, a key, so that everyone is aware of what is needed in the school system. But as Glenn pointed out, they're not getting short-shrifted. We're all trying to share an ever-shrinking resource. And the only thing I would say, apart from what's already been said, is the schools have to be funded so that the education is top-notch, because basically that's what increases our property values and brings in nice folks like yourself.
Well, I've been in business for 20 years as a real estate developer, and when I want to build in your neighborhood or in South Boston or whatever, I ask for the moon and I take a triple-decker. And I think if you want more money out of the Warren Committee, you ask them, and you ask again, and you ask again. And as Tom Flatley used to say, it's whoever holds their breath the longest wins. I think you get to the point where they're just sick of you and they give you a little more than what you're looking for. I'm one of these guys, I don't give up too easy. When I want something, I'll go after it. It's what I've been doing for 20 years with politicians and union leaders, and I would be more diplomatic with the Warren Committee because they do hold the purse strings. But definitely I would ask and ask until they're completely sick of me, so that we can get more money for the school committee.
Thank you. Would you give that to Murray, because he's going to start with the next question. It's a follow-up to what we were just talking about. If you're a member of the school committee, do you believe it's important to also be a town meeting member so that you can vote on the school budget that's presented at town meeting? Murray.
Sure. As a matter of fact, I'm also running for a town meeting member, so don't forget to vote.
What precinct? What precinct?
10.
Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. Glenn, you're next.
Yes. As a school committee member, you vote on what your request is, and you vote on how to spend what you eventually get. But certainly as a town meeting member, you have some say to the step in between that, of how you get from what you're asking for to what you get. And yes, I think it's perfectly reasonable and probably essential to be a town meeting member while you're on school committee. I mean, you could not be one, but I think it limits your ability to discuss it.
Oh, and I'm going to ask a follow-up because I don't live in Needham. Are you a school committee member? Are you a town meeting member?
Yes.
Thank you. And the sake of all the candidates, same question. We're going to add that to this. So Glenn is running, and Murray is running, and Glenn is a town meeting member. Next is Dennis, please. Same question.
Yes, I am actually running for a town meeting member in Precinct 5 as well. And I think it's really important that you should be a town meeting member to actually vote on what you're proposing in the school committee.
Thank you. Margaret.
Yes. I am not a town meeting member. I ran once for a town meeting and I lost. I hope that's not a foreshadowing of things to come. I do think it's an important thing. I am not running for town meeting. I signed up to run for school committee toward the end of it. I do trust my town meeting members to make good decisions, and in the future I'll run for town meeting if I get elected to school committee.
Thank you. You're welcome. Okay. Dennis, you're up next. The next question. Please describe your qualifications and past experience. How do they prepare you for this role? Specifically, what other experience do you have working with large budgets and any experience in implementing financial reforms that promote efficiency and effectiveness?
Well, I came to this country 22 years ago with $600 of borrowed money, and my wife and I, we started a company over 20 years ago, and it's in the real estate business. We have built it up to a substantial size with a substantial budget every year in the millions. And so that is where my experience is coming from. Every day I wake up and I'm dealing with a substantial budget, capital planning, dealing with politicians every day in trying to negotiate rezoning and building in people's neighborhoods where they don't want me to build. And I'm also dealing with contract negotiations with unions and unions that threaten to picket me when we don't hire them. So this is all stuff that is essential to the new school committee coming up. This is stuff that I taught myself over the last 20 years. I have made very few mistakes, I'm very proud to say. And I would hope to bring that to the school committee. I would hope they would learn from me on this school committee with my experience, because it is the future. The budget is the key here for the future for the future committee.
Thank you. Next to answer that question is Murray.
Well, unlike Dennis, I've made plenty of mistakes. But you learn from those, hopefully. I'm a real estate appraiser of commercial property, and as such, I have a very analytical mind. You need that in order to appraise property properly. I'm also on the Governmental Affairs Committee for the Mass Board of Real Estate Appraisers. I'm on the Consolidated Facilities Committee for the town of Milton, which is charged with saving money for the town by consolidating the management and day-to-day operation of facilities. Could you ask the question again?
Please describe your qualifications and past experience and how they prepare you for this role. Specifically, what other experience do you have working with large budgets, and any experience in implementing financial reforms that promote efficiency and effectiveness?
In terms of running large corporations or large budgets, I dare say I have the same experience that most do on this panel and on the committee itself. One thing I would say is you don't need to be a baseball player in order to analyze the game. Aside from all that, you have to be fiscally responsible, which I am. And that's one of the keys to running any business, whether it's a private corporation or a public.
Thank you. Margaret, the same question, please.
I help run a small preschool in West Roxbury. There are about 80 families. And what I do every year is I negotiate salaries and contracts with teachers. I negotiate health insurance with our Ruger. I work on the tuition rates and scholarship programs for families. I work with the voucher state program, the Child Care Choices of Boston. And so my experience is on a small scale, but it's all the same thing. Cleaning the building, maintaining the building, the grounds, the cleaning service, and all that stuff. So I have experience doing that on a small scale. We've moved the school 4 times since I've been working there and since 1993. So I have experience with that as well, and building a new building in 2004. And in terms of the educational side, I bring to the school committee a real depth and understanding of the complex issues of education in the 21st century and how budget affects the educational decisions that you make. What budget decisions you make, how they affect the education that you're offering your students. And those would be the qualities that I would bring to the school committee.
Thank you. And Glenn, the same question.
I'm not in industry. I'm a professor at mathematics and computer science at Bridgewater State College. I have served for 4 years, 2.5 years as chair as the warrant committee in Milton. I presented 3 town budgets of a time on the order of $70 to $80 million to town meeting. I took over as chair of the warrant committee at a time when the town accountant unexpectedly left, leaving me to figure out exactly what was happening, because at the time the town accountant was the keeper of all the spreadsheets and so forth that we used to generate the budget. So it was an interesting time, a sort of trial by fire to learn how the budget of Milton worked. But that was my really first foray into budgeting, was really for the town of Milton, looking at the warrant committee, bringing it to town meetings. During the time of the school building projects was just getting started, so we had, during my time as chair, we had 3 annual meetings. I lost track of how many specials had to do with the school building project. I'm also treasurer of the Massachusetts State College Association, so I run a $2 or $3 million budget representing all the faculty at the state colleges across the state. And I also sit on the Board of Higher Education, Mass Teachers Association Health and Welfare Trust Fund. I'm one of the 12 trustees of the Health Benefits Fund for all the faculty at community colleges, the university, and the state colleges. So I have some experience with the budget.
Thank you. Dennis has asked for a 30-second rebuttal, so we are going to give him that opportunity, and if anybody else has something else they feel they need to add, it'll be 30 seconds.
I would tend to disagree with what Murray mentioned about you don't have to be a baseball player to analyze the game. We're talking about a $35 million budget here. And it's very hard to have people that are predominantly educators on the committee handling this sort of a budget. It's really time to, for the committee to understand that you need a business person to complement the committee, the rest of the committee at this particular time, especially when we're in an economic crisis.
Thank you. I need to stop you there. Does anybody else want to speak to this before we move on? There's... Yes, okay. 30 seconds.
Just to say something in favor of educators serving on the school committee. Running a school system is not entirely like running a business. I mean, with a business, if your customers are demanding things that cost too much money, you can say, well, maybe you should take your business somewhere else. With a school system, you have to serve the children you have in front of you. You have to serve the needs of the community. You have to provide what the law requires you to provide. So it's not entirely a business model. Certainly there are things you can learn from a business model, but there are educational issues.
Thank you. Okay, anything else, Margaret?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
For change.
But Margaret knows that she is next on the next question.
Look at that, how many
Because she's
questions?
been following this random pattern. I don't know, how did you know that? I need my little chart.
Our brain is going to go to sleep.
Very good. You're next to answer the next question. That was quite impressive. Okay.
That everyday math curriculum.
Because of budget constraints and lack of funding, parents of students with special needs are often at odds with parents of children who don't have special needs. Fighting for too few resources, how would you deal with this dilemma if elected?
Well, I hate to think of us as fighting about resources, because I know a lot of the members of the PAC, which is the Parent Advisory Council for the Special Education program here in the town, and they send regular emails to parents like myself who do not have a child identified as special needs, and they invite you to attend meetings and be involved in the conversation. And I think that what benefits one child can benefit all children, and particularly in programs with special needs. I had a child that was a role model in a co-taught classroom last year, and it was a very good experience for him. It was a small classroom, 2 well-trained teachers, opportunities to work with other children who had varying needs than him, and it really opened my eyes as well. So I think that I don't like to think of us as fighting against each other. Yes, special needs take up a large part of our budget, but I think that by benefiting children that have special needs, we benefit all of our children, and we work together for the common good of our community.
Thank you. Dennis, same question, please. The challenge between financing special needs programs and non-special general education.
I'm a huge advocate for financing the special needs programs. I'm very lucky that I got 3 daughters that are not special needs, and I recently attended a PAC meeting at the library at the high school, and I came out of there and my heart just dropped. I couldn't believe what these parents go through. So, yes, I would be an advocate for continuing giving them full funding for everything that they're requesting. We're very lucky to have children that are not in the special needs programs, and I just couldn't imagine what it would be to have a special needs kid. I would, but then again, it's very hard to please everybody all the time. No matter how much you give people, they'll still want more, and you just got to draw the line. You've got to let them know that there's a cap on this budget. We can't give them everything, and as I said, we just can't please all the people all the time.
Thank you. Glenn, send it the opposite direction. Thank you very much. Glenn, you've got this question.
It isn't so much competing for resources, it's competing for services. The children who have special needs need certain services and are legally entitled to get certain services. Their individual education plan is a contract between the town, the school system, and their parents. So the issue is, how do you provide the children with the services they need in a way that isn't pulling away money from the so-called regular education section of the schools? And some of the issues, as I said before, we talk about we brought some of the autistic spectrum children into the system as a way to provide them the services without sending them out of district and spending money. That freed up money for the rest of the system. And so what you have to do is you have to look not so much at the dollar cost of each thing, but at how do you provide the service that needs. And we have a group, the NEC group, in providing services in the school system now for a class of students who would have been outsourced again this year. We brought people in from, they're affiliated with Collaborative out in Marlborough, and they provide services that we couldn't provide. And so, again, you try to find a way to give the people the services that they're legally entitled to and required to get in the most efficient method possible. And I think that's how you balance the needs of one group against the needs of the whole.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we're all the way at this end. It's Murray's turn for the same question.
I actually have a neighbor with special needs children, and currently he sends his child to Hull. I believe his child is autistic and also has other issues. One of the things that, and I spoke to him about this at length, one of the ideas that he had, which seems to me to be something at least to look into, is rather than have to send our children outside the system, why not do as other systems like Hull does and hire teachers that are cross-trained to handle different issues for children and beef up this particular aspect of the educational system and bring in others from outside of Milton and increase the budget that way. Just a thought.
Thank you. Okay, Gwen, you're going to start us off on this question. Assuming that one of the proposed student reassignment plans is not settled on before the election, how would you proceed if elected?
Say that again.
Yes. I don't know. Assuming that one of the proposed student reassignment plans is not settled on before the election, sounds to me that you're doing a reassessment of the town?
We're not.
Do you know where this question came from? Okay, forget it. Let's move on. Grab it now. Okay. Given the resources, this one we can understand. Given the resources the town devotes to the Milton Public Schools, are you satisfied with statewide test scores? How can we demand better performance from teachers and administrators? Does it make sense to work with surrounding towns to identify best practices to implement in Milton? Would you make any changes? And we are at Glenn on this question.
You're never satisfied with test scores. I mean, to the extent that if you believe the test scores actually monitor how well children are learning, you want your children to learn. And in Massachusetts, the measure of learning, like it or not, is MCAS. And we test children up, down, right, and left from 3rd grade through 10th grade. And, that is the law of the land, so we deal with it. And are you ever satisfied with it? No, of course not. You're not satisfied until every child gets a perfect score. I mean, that's just the nature of it. How do you hold teachers accountable for it and administrators accountable for it? I mean, the issue is professional development. There is a lot of professional development out there. We're not alone in dealing with MCAS. There are best practices all over the place that people look at. Our teachers go to professional development conferences. I've actually run a professional development collaborative for 23 years at Bridgewater, where we work with K-12 math teachers. There are lots of opportunities for professional development, and the Milton teachers take advantage of it. I know because I see them there. I see them at various places that I'm at least in the math department, because those are the folks I'm most familiar with. So I think you keep working. It's an ongoing battle. I mean, there's no question about it. There are lots of issues that affect test scores other than what happens in the classroom, as we all know. The child who comes to school hungry is not as good in those first couple classes as the one, came to school full. There are all sorts of issues that, even in Milton, we have. So, I mean, there are lots of things you have to deal with.
Thank you. Okay. Margaret.
Test scores are a tricky subject for me. I think of the MCAS as a day in the life of a child. A child can take the MCAS on a day and do well, or a child can take it and do poorly, depending, as Glenn just mentioned, on the day, the way it was. And MCAS is only one measure of assessment, and when you are a school administration, you need to be working with your teachers to determine how they are evaluating and assessing the children throughout the year, and what other measures are you using to assess and evaluate how children are doing. Because teachers have an enormous task in front of them. They're educating sometimes 28 kids in a class, and they're trying to meet pretty good standards, but then to meet the requirements of passing this test. So I think that you support teachers with professional development, and you support teachers by giving them other tools of assessment and evaluation. How do they use homework? How do they use portfolios? How do they use progress reports? And you use those tools in addition to other ones to determine how well your school system is performing and where you want to go with it in the future.
Thank you. And Murray, same question, please. Let me know if you need it again.
Sure.
Okay, given the resources, I don't know if I can read it the same way the second time. Given the resources the town devotes to the Milton Public Schools, are you satisfied with statewide test scores? How can we demand better performance from teachers and administrators? Does it make sense to work with surrounding towns to identify best practices to implement in Milton?
Well, of course, as Glenn said, you're never satisfied. You'd like every student to be a straight A student with an A+ average. And of course, again, you obviously encourage and support professional development and best practices. And I would certainly encourage reaching out to surrounding communities to see how they're dealing with issues, because we all have the same issues. It might be different from one community to another in terms of, say, science or math or English, but, collaboration is a good thing. And reaching out to the surrounding towns, I would support wholeheartedly.
Thank you. And Dennis?
If you want to be successful in anything in life, you've got to emulate somebody that is already successful and just do everything that they're doing. So I would encourage the administration to go to different towns that are actually much higher up on the MCAS scores than we are here in Milton, and see if they can bring that back. I would also be a huge proponent of asking teachers and the administration to bring parents into the classroom, to bring parents in on Saturdays, because as much as we can teach them in the schools, it really starts at home. And if they don't have a good home base, a good grounding at home, if they don't have the parents sitting down with them reading and to them every night, well then it's virtually impossible for teachers to take on from where the parents should have started. So that would be my first thing, is to be an advocate to bring parents right into the classroom. I have first-hand experience, and so does my wife Mary, of going into the classrooms on weekdays and on Saturdays to help kids, and it really proves to be beneficial.
Thank you. Okay, I've just been told we have about 5 more minutes, and then we're going to do closing statements. So I think we'll probably get one more question, and we'll see how where that takes us. We're starting with Murray on this question. And it's a question about state benefit programs for employees of the Milton Public Schools and contracts. Does it make sense to impose state benefit programs on employees of Milton Public Schools during the next contract cycle in order to reduce costs? And then the question goes on to ask about imposing state benefits on administrators. Can you speak to the question of contracts?
Well, as I think we all know, union contracts are coming up next year, and while we again have limited resources, that is definitely an avenue for cost cutting and tough negotiations to hold our costs down, and I would certainly advocate for that. The last go-around, there were some pretty decent raises given out in very tough fiscal times. So I would just say that we have to start looking at having parity between private and public sectors. There's many people out there hurting for work, out of work, their incomes have been cut, they're just making ends meet, and we all have to share, we all have to be fair. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Glenn, can you answer the question, please?
The first comment I'd make is you can't impose anything on anyone. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your point of view, I suppose, the state has different rules for itself than it has for municipalities. The state can impose the state's healthcare system on state employees, like myself. And it's not subject to any collective bargaining whatsoever. The legislature does it, they say it, it's done. They did not give to the cities and towns that same ability. And in fact, the school system doesn't, the school committee doesn't bargain benefits with its employees. The employees of the town have to bargain collectively, all unions together, with the town in order to change their benefit package. So it isn't actually part of our negotiation with the teachers. We can't say, we want you to pay a certain percentage of your health care. That has to be bargained on a town-wide basis with all the unions in the town sitting down collectively with, in this case, the Board of Selectmen, to determine that process. Now, they've been trying to go through it for the last year. It's a difficult process. The state has a bar on there that says basically you have to have a 70% buy-in from the union in order to get into the GIC, for all the unions collectively. That's a very difficult hurdle. If you're interested in doing something like this, there are movements afoot in the legislature to change the law to allow a certain amount of plan design to go to the municipalities. But unless that goes through, we're not going to be able to impose anything. So it's going to be a legislative issue.
Thank you. Dennis, the same question, please.
Well, I understand it to be a little different than what Glenn has explained it to be. But I am definitely in favor of opening up talks on getting everybody in the GIC system in Milton. I've had talks with some local politicians and state politicians, and they say that Milton can save up to $1 million the first year. Stoughton has saved $700,000 the first year, and the town of Canton has saved $850,000. That's what I'm told. As regards to contract negotiations, this is my forte. This is what I do every day. And if you let them bully you, they're just like pit bulls. You've got to stand up to them. I'm not a union buster by no means. In fact, I'm in favor of the unions. But there has to be a sense of fairness in this economic crisis. Nobody has gone through the last 2 years and can say that they haven't lost money or they didn't break even. But still we're giving out raises like it's growing on trees. There has to be a sense of fairness, and that's what I will bring to this committee. I will be able to sit down with these and use my everyday skills in giving them a fair but firm negotiations and bring some common sense to the table. That's what I will do.
Thank you. Margaret, please.
I would have to say that in terms of the health insurance, I think this is a big issue going forward. If you've been reading the newspaper for the last 2 days, there's a lot going on because of the healthcare reform and insurance companies and fighting with the state about increasing premiums and stuff. So I think the group insurance is going to be the way of the future. I do think that, I know that it's not an ability of the school committee to negotiate that. That's a town administrator job. And so hopefully the unions can all come together and do that. And in terms of contracts are a difficult thing. I negotiate contracts with young teachers every year. And teaching is the second hardest job to do besides parenting. And you have to take into concern and consideration your budgets, of course, and you have to use your resources wisely, and you have to work together to come to the best possible decision for the town. And I think that that's the attitude we have to take. We're a small town, and the schools are our biggest expense and largest employee, and we have to work with the teachers to find some equity in terms of increase in living wages and also what we're able to do as a town. So that would be my approach. I think shorter contracts, perhaps, as opposed to the 301 that we just had, which led to some trouble because we ran into a lot of fiscal trouble that perhaps we hadn't anticipated as a nation as well.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to go into closing statements now. Each candidate will have a minute for a closing statement. And Margaret, you're up first, please. Oh. Sorry.
Well, I just want to say that I had a nice time coming here this evening and talking to all of you. I'm really excited about the possibility of serving on the school committee. I feel that I have the skills and the experience necessary to serve the town and the schools well. If you're looking for someone who can work collaboratively with other people, if you're looking for someone who has the gift of listening to more than one side of a story and trying to understand someone else's perspective, and if you're looking for someone who's truly invested in education and what it means to educate young children, middle schoolers, high schoolers, and parents, then you should vote for me on April 27th, Margaret Eberhard. Thank you.
Thank you. Dennis, your closing statement, please.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. The biggest issue we have right now in our school budget is money. We don't have it. We don't have enough to go around. And our present committee is predominantly made up of educators, teachers, social workers, and a professor, who decide where the budget of $35 million goes every year. My question is, would you let a plumber unblock a valve in your heart? You wouldn't. So why let a committee that's predominantly educators decide where $35 million is going to educate our children? I believe the last thing we need on this committee is another educator. We need somebody with experience in contract negotiations, budgeting, capital planning, dealing with politicians to sit on this committee over the next 3 years so that we can bring some sort of a foundation to this budget and maybe for once skip an override. That's what I would bring to this committee.
Thank you. And Glenn?
Thank you. I think in the last few years we've made some great strides in this community. We have a new school administration that I think everyone recognizes has brought a level of openness and discussion with the community that we haven't had in a long time. We have hit a lot of fiscal issues in the last few years. But I've been on the warrant committee. I know this town's budget inside out. I continue to say that the issues that are facing the school aren't school issues for the most part. They are town issues. They are issues between the state and the community. I've worked through every budget in this town. I know how the town works. And I think I have a lot to bring to this committee. I've enjoyed being on it. I want to stay on it for another term. I think we have some issues in front of us. I think I'm qualified to address those issues. I'd ask for you to vote. And I hope you get out to the polls on the 27th.
Thank you. And Murray, your closing statement, please.
As a businessman, I know the value of good education and the rewards of hard work. When elected, I will be an independent voice on the committee and consider every issue with an open mind. It is my fervent belief that to be truly effective, the school board has a duty to and must focus on representing not only the children and the parents, but the taxpayers of Milton as well. And I will fulfill that role. As we go forward, Milton will be facing, as we all know, tough fiscal challenges with limited, never-shrinking resources. I am fiscally conservative and will look for ways to increase revenue wherever possible while seeking out efficiencies. I also think that there are too many educators on the committee. We need more of a balance and a fiscally conservative outlook on the committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for the candidates. Okay, our next group will be the Board of Assessors. So if those candidates could come forward. We'll switch our thinking from education to property values. Good luck. The department reviews properties for which a building permit has been issued by the town to determine what changes or additions have been made and updates the property valuation accordingly. real estate and personal property are valued as of January 1st of the calendar year for the fiscal year, which runs from July 1st to June 30th of the following year. We have 3 candidates, Kathy Heffernan, Todd Greenwood, and Jim Henderson. All 3 have agreed to be on first-name basis. We are now friendly here. And again, 3 candidates for 1 position. So our first question, we're going to start in alphabetical order. So we start with Todd Greenwood, and then we're going to Kathy Heffernan, and then Jim Henderson. And we'll rotate around. Todd, Kathy, and Jim, in that order, our first question. So let's come up with the first question. What experience do you have that qualifies you to take on this role? Do we have a microphone? Very good, thank you.
Yes, thank you. I come to the table here with a significant amount of experience, training, and desire for this position. I've been a town meeting member for three terms. I've got an MBA in finance. I've been certified by the Massachusetts Department of Revenue and Tax Assessment as I promised last year when I ran. And last year I didn't have the opportunity to speak to this body, and I appreciate it this year. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sorry, Kathy.
My qualifications for the job, I am also certified by the Department of Revenue to serve as an assessor. In addition, I have 15 years of experience on the board, during which time the Department of Revenue has each year certified our setting of the tax rate, which is the state stamp of approval on the work of the Board of Assessors. I've been a town meeting member for over 30 years and have served on the Warren Committee. I believe I have a broad and deep understanding of the revenue raising process and capabilities of the town, and have served as a member of the board well over the past 15 years.
Thank you. Jim, please.
My name is Jim Henderson, and the Board of Assessors, they deal primarily with real estate tax assessment. And the 2 components, I know taxes. I have been a licensed and practicing CPA. I own my own business for over 30 years. I deal with taxes at the federal, state, and local levels, and even international levels. There isn't a tax form that I haven't seen, or some tax laws that I really haven't been exposed to. Second component, I know real estate. While I don't actively practice real estate, I am a licensed real estate broker in Massachusetts. So I think the combination of those 2 skills bring to the board a depth of knowledge and real-world experience that would be absolutely necessary. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question is to Kathy, please, to begin with. Same question to everybody. What impact do falling real estate values have on assessments? Can you please explain the process?
The assessments are based on market sales, basically. The specifics of a particular property are in the computer in the form of data. We computerize the square footage of a house, how many bathrooms, how many bedrooms, what your floors are made out of, et cetera, et cetera. And we compare existing homes with similar homes that have sold within the previous year. And that basically is how we come up with the assessment. When the prices fall, then the assessments fall. And in order to raise the amount of revenue that it takes to operate the town, if the values of the homes fall, it is necessary for the tax rate to increase, because you still have to come up with that figure. Whatever it is that comprises the budget that is necessary to run the town.
Thank you. Todd, same question, please. Can you describe any different part of that? When real estate values fall, what does that do to assessments and budgets?
Well, essentially, we still have a $60 million common budget not to cover, so there's not a lot of change that happens with that, unfortunately. One thing that I'd like to mention about a comment earlier is that there's a difference between a tax preparer and a tax advocate. As a member of the Board of Assessors, I'd be your tax advocate. Last year, you might have seen an article that I wrote in the South Shore Senior News, which had an article I was telling about the things that seniors could do to lighten their tax burden. That was when I was running last year. This is not something that I'm thinking about this year or just recently. There was an article in the March 09 about senior issues for reducing their taxes. You should look back and read it because it's very useful. And that's why I'd like you to consider me as your candidate. I'm an advocate for you. I'll be your friend at Town Hall. You can call me with any types of questions that you have, and I'll be there to gladly answer them and help you out with your needs.
Okay. Jim, can you bring us back to the question? What impact do falling real estate values have on assessments? And can you explain the process and what does the town do about it?
Well, just as Kathy said, as the values go down, you still have to raise the amount of money, so your tax rate will go up. So it's one goes up, one goes down. We still have to raise the same amount of money. It's nice of somebody to kind of steal my campaign theme, my tax advocate, saying I'm a tax preparer. I don't think my over 1,500 clients who I've dealt with for the last 30 years will say that I'm simply a tax preparer. I actively work for them. I represent them before the Commonwealth of Mass Appellate Tax Board. I represent them before the IRS. So I am a true tax advocate. I am not just a tax preparer.
Thank you. Are we ready to go on? Does anybody need to request a rebuttal? Okay. Jim, you're next with this question, to start with this question. The question is written, do you think there should be a tax discount for the elderly? And I would add, can you give us some idea of what you think could be done to help senior citizens stay in their homes?
Well, I think they definitely, there is actually a exemption that is in place. It is available. But there are 1,750 households in Milton with 70-year or older occupants. And out of those 1,750, only 65 got the senior exemption last year. Now, what started me to get into this race was the fact that I have two clients who qualified based on their income level, based on their asset level, and they didn't get it. And I said, well, why? And one said she wasn't aware of it. The other one said it's too difficult to apply. And I think that that is absolutely wrong. We should be advocating and reaching out to the taxpayers, the seniors, the veterans, who do qualify for these exemptions, and doing workshops, and doing other things like putting the forms online so they can fill them out online, and to make it easier for the taxpayers to qualify for these exemptions, not making it difficult, and not denying them just because they don't get it in on time, or they don't understand. And I think that that is absolutely wrong. I advocate for my clients and work with them with regard to taxes, and that's what I plan to do for the taxpayers in Milton.
Thank you. Kathy, the same question regarding senior citizen issues around taxes.
There are a number of exemptions for seniors. All of this is set by state law. There are income, residency, and age requirements. And actually, the income requirements are very low, maximum of $21,000 for an individual senior who's characterized as being 70 years or older. The deadlines that are set by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. They are set by statute. We do not set the deadlines. In fact, the Office of the Board of Assessors mails out applications to every individual who received an exemption the year before. And if the application isn't returned, they send out another application. The applicant has about 3 months to fill out the form and return it. The forms can be filled out in pen, pencil. They can be brought in blank to the office, and the office staff will help do it. I will go out and help people do it. In addition, we do have a work-off program in Milton. It's for seniors. I believe there is an income ceiling on that, and seniors can work a certain number of hours during the year, and they get credit for $500 toward their property taxes. So that is another program.
Thank you. And Todd, the question of senior citizens and tax issues.
Thank you. Yes, there's a number of things that seniors have access to, such as the circuit breaker, the property tax deferral, and the work-off, as Kathy had mentioned. But one thing that I would do is I'd implement an open door policy. I'd provide proactive dissemination of tax relief and assessment-related information. I provide interactive training online, and I translate the forms into layman's terms. One of the things that, as campaigning, I noticed that a lot of people don't know about is a thing called the Homestead Act, the Homestead Exemption. And what that does is it protects taxpayers against unsecured creditor doing forced sales of your home. Over half of the people that I banged on doors and asked about that said they had no idea about it. I go out and proactively promote those types of things and institute a program where the people who are newer to the community are provided with this type of information. And there are a lot of new people to Milton, and welcome, and I hope you vote for them.
Thank you. Okay, the next
I
question.
would like to,
Yes, 30 seconds.
okay. First of all, the forms are promulgated by the Department of Revenue. They're not made up locally. We have to use the forms that the Department of Revenue has provided. And in addition, the office does make an effort to reach out to the public. We give presentations before town forum. The appraiser made a presentation this fall at the Council on Aging. I have appeared before groups, and we do disseminate information through the office.
Okay, thank you. Yes, why don't you just keep it and we'll pass it right on down. So go ahead.
Yeah, and the forms are online, but you have to download them. The City of Boston uses a system where it is filling the form online, and they have supporting instructions attached to the form, so it makes it easier for the person to fill in the information. So that is something that I think should be done and brought to the taxpayers.
Thank you.
Yes, my opponent claims that they've had open access, but you would never know that from the notification that they've given of their meetings over the past 3 years or the times that they've had their meetings. Not one meeting in the past 2.5 years has been had at 7 o'clock, as most town meetings, groups and committees have them at.
Okay. Todd, you're going to go first on this one. What do you think is the biggest challenge if you were to be elected?
Well, one of the biggest challenges, I think, is just the inertia. All right, there's been such a lack of momentum in providing open access, convenience, and transparency in the town for the Milton taxpayers. Overcoming inertia is my biggest challenge. I have a number of concrete proposals that I would implement to make things better for the taxpayers, such as improving the online systems, such as proactively providing information to elders and new residences, and essentially being available with email and telephone and other types of communications for that type of information access.
Thank you. Jim, what do you see as the biggest challenge if you were to be elected?
Well, the Board of Assessors are basically trained to enforce the laws of the Massachusetts Chapter 59. Pretty much like an Internal Revenue agent is enforcing the laws for the government, U.S. government. And in that position, they're pretty much your adversary. And I think we would be elected by the taxpayers of Milton, and we should not be just their adversaries, saying, no, you didn't apply on time, this form isn't filled in correctly. We should be advocating for the taxpayers. And now I see other people saying that they want to be the advocate after I've mentioned it in my campaign so far. But still, I am the true advocate. This is what I do for my clients. I've been doing this for 30 years, advocating for them in front of the IRS and the state. And I think that's the main difference. I want to be the true advocate. I want to open it up and make it so that people understand. Nobody likes to pay taxes, but I think it's our duty to inform them as to what the process is, make it open, have the meeting minutes online so people understand what the process is, and they might not like the end result. Nobody likes taxes, but still, at least we're informing them and helping them.
Thank you. Kathy, what do you see as the biggest challenge in this position should you be elected?
I think actually the challenge is twofold. One is to maintain a fair and equitable system of assessment so that people are paying only what they should be paying for property taxes. In addition, the openness of the committee, I think, has been unfairly criticized. For one thing, as I said, the application forms have to be in by certain deadlines, and those deadlines are set by the state. They are not set by us. Secondly, I don't know of any instance where a form was rejected because it was not filled out correctly. If a form comes in that's not filled out correctly, the person would get a phone call and would be asked to provide the information that's lacking. I guess I'll let it go at that. Thank you.
Okay. This is our last question. Kathy, you can keep that microphone because you're going to answer this one first. And the question is, and we're going to tweak it for you, Kathy, because you're an incumbent. It says, do you see yourselves doing things differently than the current assessor? So as a current assessor, the question I believe should be, what would you do differently should you be elected? Would you make changes? What would you do differently?
Actually, it was pointed out to me at the last forum that there is an electronic meeting board on the town website, which I had been unaware of and which we hadn't been posting our meetings on. We're now posting meetings on the town site. And I think that it's been pointed out a couple of other ways that we would employ improvements. We sometimes have taxpayers who want to meet with the Board of Assessors, and we set a meeting to allow that person the most convenience to come in. If it is a hardship for people, we certainly meet in the evening. And in fact, our next meeting is set for an evening time.
Okay, thank you. Todd, same question, please. Should you be elected? You've spoken to this a little bit, but what would you see doing differently?
Thank you. There are three things that I would be doing differently, and they can be an acronym, ACT, ACT, Access, Convenience, and Transparency. I'd start an open door policy under Access, I should say, proactive dissemination of tax relief and assessment-related information, such as senior information, Homestead Act information. I provide interactive training online. That's something that I can do. I translate the forms and the mumbo-jumbo into layman's terms. Convenience. I make it a policy to have all of the meetings at a certain time, notify things 2 weeks minimum to a month ahead of time. I post the minutes online and I post the agendas online. Transparency. It's public information. You shouldn't have to go digging for it. I'd implement new systems that would provide easy mouse click access information to the town's data. 20 other towns in Massachusetts are doing it with things. If you can do Google Maps or point and click with a mouse, you can access their data. 3 things: access, convenience, and transparency. Thank you.
Thank you. And Jim, should you be elected, what would you do differently?
Well, I think we've talked about the main thing is making the board more open and more accessible. And as I said, there's no reason for us to be, the board members, to be adversaries. They should be advocating for the taxpayers. We have a situation, even the IRS has a taxpayer advocacy office that they have that deals with the taxpayers. So we should be more taxpayer friendly. We should be dealing with the taxpayers and helping them and assisting them in the process, as opposed to maybe being part of the process that makes it difficult for them to succeed, whether they're going for an abatement or whether they're going for an exemption. These are the things that I think it's really nuts and bolts, down and dirty, blocking and tackling. That's the stuff that we need to make it more open and more accessible for the taxpayers.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to go into closing statements. You will each have a minute. And Jim, we'll go in the order of Jim, Kathy, and Todd, which is reverse of where we started.
Okay. My name is Jim Henderson. I'm a CPA, as I mentioned earlier, so I know taxes. I must admit, I am a little bit insulted being called a tax preparer because that's not what I do. And writing an article in the senior news, well, I've written hundreds of articles, and I'll bring them into the next presentation. But the point is that I want to be the tax advocate. I have the skills. I have real-world skills. I run a business. I have 4 offices. I employ 15 people. So I understand business. When applications come into the office from a commercial enterprise with regard to evaluating their assessment, I understand tax returns. I can read them. I understand financial statements. So I have the skills, whether it be as a CPA or as a real estate broker, to bring this to the board, to do the job on the board. But primarily, I want to be the advocate, the person who opens it up on the board, makes it more accessible for the people who don't.
Thank you, Jim. Kathy, your closing statement, please.
Jim may be insulted to be called the tax preparer, but I'm insulted to be called an adversary to the taxpayer because I've been anything but. I think that my tenure on the Board of Assessors has been characterized by a willingness to listen, to be extraordinarily fair and open-minded when dealing with requests for abatements. I do not accept campaign contributions. I have never accepted campaign contributions. I think that it's a requirement for the board, should be a requirement for the Board of Assessors to maintain absolute impartiality by not accepting any campaign contributions. I believe I am the only candidate today that takes that position. I would like to continue to serve on the board, and I ask for your vote on the 27th. Thank you.
Thank you. Todd, you want to close for us, please?
Thank you. Yes, I've got the education, training, and drive to make a difference in the Milton Board of Assessors. Why you should like me? I'm a 20-year resident. My children both attend Milton Public Schools. I'm a Precinct 7 town meeting member, 3rd term. I've got a graduate degree in business administration. I've got experience professionally as a quantitative analyst in a number of large corporations. I currently hold certification for the Massachusetts Department of Revenue and Assessment Training. I'm independent and partial. If you know me, you'll attest to that. And I will work for you with energy and dedication. You'll have a friend in Town Hall.
Thank you. Thank you to all the candidates. Good luck in the election. All right, may I ask the 2 planning board candidates to come forward? Does everybody want to stretch a little? The board consists of a 5-member board elected to 3-year terms on a community-wide basis. They are charged with adapting master plan, an official map of town, conducting studies and preparing plans of the resource possibilities and needs of the town to the Selectmen, reviewing all preliminary and definitive subdivisions of land, drafting and submitting zoning amendments, serving in some instances as the special permit granting authority, and serving as site plan review authority. There are 2 candidates for 1 position, Edward Duffy and Cheryl Tugais. Did you do that okay? I did. Thank you. Okay, 2 candidates. We're just going to go back and forth because that's how you do it with 2 candidates. And the first question goes to Edward. What experience do you have that qualifies you to take on this role?
Thank you. Minor correction. We are elected to 5-year terms.
5-year terms. Thank you.
You're welcome. My name is Ed Duffy, and I've been a member of the planning board for 10 years. I have a touch of bronchitis, excuse me. I've been on the planning board for 10 years. Prior to that, for about 40 years, I worked for the town, mostly in the engineering and planning departments. I'm a Milton native. My experience on the Historical Society, various other cultural enterprises in town. It makes me, I think, one of the more knowledgeable persons about the town and its culture and its life over the last 300 plus years. Thank you.
Thank you. And Cheryl, what experience do you have that qualifies you to take on this role?
I am a registered architect with 25 years of experience in land use, site planning, and building design. The last 18 years of which I've been a principal of a firm that I co-founded. In my work, I'm committed to historic preservation. I served on a historic district commission for a number of years. I'm also committed to sustainable design. I'm what's called a LEED AP, which is Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design Accredited Professional, which is a designation put forth by the U.S. Green Building Council. It means that I'm qualified to lead design teams on projects that are more sustainable so that we're using our resources more wisely. In my experience, I've worked in a number of communities. I've presented before a number of regulatory review boards. I've engaged community input, and I've balanced diverse interests in putting forth building designs and site plans. I think this is a skill set that is incredibly important to add to the current skill set on the planning board.
Thank you. Would you keep that microphone because you're going to take the next question? Please give us your opinion of the traffic plans for the Central Avenue Business District.
Are those existing or proposed? Sorry, I just said.
Existing or proposed? Have a vote.
Well, I know that there's, I'm familiar with recent changes in the layout of the roadways in Central Ave area, in which there's stop signs added and pedestrian crossings. That has made the area less of a drive-through and more of a place for pedestrians. And I think that it serves to enhance the businesses that are in that area. And if there is a new proposal for traffic, then I will be anxious to get up to speed on it.
Thank you. And Edward?
Thank you. I'm not aware of any new proposals, but of the existing stop sign configuration. Very often, when I'm out in the afternoon bike ride, I'll stop, get off the bikeway and stop in front of the wine shop and just watch the behavior of the motorists, and it seems to be working marvelously well. With the pedestrians having a fair chance to get across the street. I don't know what other things are planned traffic-wise.
Okay, so hold on to that microphone, and here's the next question. How does the planning board balance the rights of individual property owners with the needs of the town to grow and develop the commercial tax base?
I'm not sure if I understand the question, but I really don't know what they're asking.
How does the planning board balance the rights of individual property owners with the needs of the town to grow and develop the commercial tax base?
Well, the commercial tax base is limited to what was configured in 1938 by the special committee, which held 65 meetings in 1 year to formulate the zoning plan that has not been changed. The commercial plan has not been changed since 1938. An attempt was made this year to do so, and perhaps a very fair attempt, but it still did not pass the muster of 2/3. Yes, we could use more commercial revenue, but at the same time, we have a certain quality of life and a quality of real estate style that we wish to preserve in Milton. And that's what has made it so desirable as a place to live.
Thank you. Cheryl?
I think the question has a lot to do with process. I think we need to engage the entire community in a dialogue about our tax base, whether there are opportunities for us to increase our commercial tax base, where it would make sense, rather than be reactive when a proposal comes forth, be a bit more proactive as a town under the leadership of the planning board, engage people in a townwide dialogue. I think the collaborative nature, there are a lot of people who have a lot of skill sets in Milton. I think if we draw them out and participate, that we'll learn a lot and that we can help balance the interests of the individual and yet have the town be able to move forward into the 21st and 22nd century.
Thank you. Next question. It's a question about your support or lack of support for Tucker Village. So can you describe to us opinion of Tucker Village and whether or not you have an alternative idea.
I volunteered last year to serve on the Temple Advisory Committee when the planning board was looking for people of a certain skill set, including that of an architect. And through that process, we looked at a lot of proposals and we asked a lot of questions. I brought to bear in that review my 25 years of experience in looking at projects like this in other locations. And I did come to support the plan that was put forth. I spoke at town meeting in favor of the plan. And the reason I spoke in favor of the plan is that while I didn't think the plan itself was in its final form, that there was still a lot of work to be done during the special permit process, I did think that it accomplished some important goals, and that is it would allow the Temple Shalom to stay on the site, it would allow the Campbell School to stay on the site, it would provide amenities to the community. Many in that community sought those amenities, and it would provide a somewhat of an increase in the commercial tax base, a stepping stone for further increases in our tax base and amenity base.
Thank you. And Edward, your opinion of Tucker Village?
Yes. I was on the planning board at that time, and I voted against the proposal. It wasn't easy to be against the Temple proposal, CDS proposal. Regarding raising taxes from the commercial, for new commercial enterprises, the average tax bill for a single-family house in Milton is $6,200. If we had a goal to go from $6,200 to $6,000 to save everybody $200 a year, we would need 9 of those proposals, 9, to get $200 off our tax bill. And where would they go? And what would Milton be like after we had those 9 put in? I don't think you'd like the place after everywhere you turn, you'd have one of those to save $200. So I was opposed to the proposal for that and for many other reasons. But it was not easy to vote against religious enterprise.
Thank you. That leads us into the next question, which is to remain successful, traditional New England towns such as Milton should integrate contemporary uses into the historic fabric of the town. In your view, what are the best ways to accomplish this?
If I understand the question, I think that we have many places in Milton that, just as places are historically significant. For example, the town landing and the work that was done down there under the planning board review process is an example of how we can indeed raise tax revenues and also have the historical aspects of an area be preserved. It's a startlingly beautiful place down there, certain times of the day, at high tide and at sunset and so forth. But that's an example that I think you can accomplish that goal.
Cheryl, the balance between traditional New England and modern contemporary uses.
The interesting thing is many of our towns, including Milton, were built before zoning codes were enacted. And in large part, many communities, you wouldn't be able to build the kinds of towns that people really desire under the current zoning codes. I think people are finding that the zoning codes that were written to separate uses and to segregate uses, while are good on a certain level, separating industrial and heavy traffic from residential, for example, separating those from schools, for example. But on the other hand, people are now more interested in having some reasonable neighborhood amenities near them, like used to be when the towns were built before the advent of the automobile dominating how we got around. And I think Milton could benefit from it, taking a look at what we would like to see. What don't we have in Milton that we might like to see here? And then we can use our zoning code and our tools under zoning to help draw that. Some communities are advocating for mixed uses, and they're putting in overlay districts to attract a mix of uses. Others are doing it with arts districts. Others are trying to revitalize their downtown areas to have a mix where you can have a retailer on the first floor and residential up above it. I think these are the things that you can do to be more proactive, to look at the way people are living in this current economy, and with an interest in a more sustainable way of living.
Thank you. Are there any locations in town where you would support non-residential development? If so, where? That's to you first.
Well, Milton has a very small number of commercial districts. I think we can look at whether those districts could expand in any way. I think we could look at some larger parcels that have adequate access and could have adequate parking to see whether there would be potential. I think we could look at town-owned land to see if we're using our town-owned land efficiently, whether there would be any surplus land that might be available that could be put out on and join the tax rolls. And this would need to be, I think, a process where the whole town is engaged. I don't think it's one in which the planning board would be engaged. You'd go out and have charrettes or visioning sessions. You'd have this carried forth over a period of time. And the planning board, with the survey that they put forth, shows that the residents have an interest in taking a look at this.
Thank you. Edward, are there any locations in town where you would support non-residential development?
Pardon me. Specifically to say one site, no, I can't see one site, but because of the history of these things not gaining favorable votes. I don't know in general where we would start looking. Blue Hill Avenue, probably some people thought it was ideal because it's a state highway. And I think that was just the opposite happened, that it was so densely populated that it just a proposal could not go there in fairness to in the safety for the residents. So I really don't know specifically where I'd start with that process. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Can you talk about Milton's master plan? What do you think should be in it?
I helped work on the master plan in 1974 when I was working for the town, and it ended up being a compilation. It was an index to various parts of Milton. It didn't give much guidance, and we've had some talk recently and some citizen participation the last 2 or 3 years, and very interestingly, they all wanted some of the same stuff: physical and commercial centers and so forth. But again, it always will impact the neighborhood. So that's where you buck against the rubber meets the road on that one. Master plan process, you cannot do any harm. It can do good to have the people sit around and try and go through the process and see what they can come up with. And the planning board is always amenable to that process. But I don't know, again, specifically what you'd have your eyes on to start going with new commercial real estate.
Thank you. Cheryl, what do you think should be in Milton's master plan?
First of all, I think we should think of the master plan as a guide for development, and I think we need to look at what is positive and what is working well in Milton, and then how we might want to augment that. One of the difficulties is if you look at the process that over the last 2 years on the Tucker Village proposal was that process. It's where there is unpredictability to it. There's not a sense of what people would support at the outset. So the master plan really would allow for us to get buy-in, to get consensus, that people would have a shared vision for the town. And then when new proposals come forth, that's the framework against which those proposals are gauged and judged. So I do think a master plan is very important. And I shouldn't say today what I think should be in it on every site, or I wouldn't be a good advocate for the process that I think is important to come first.
Thank you. We're going to move into closing statements, and Cheryl, you've got a minute, please.
Milton is a wonderful town. I moved here 12 years ago. I value the town as well as anybody who's been living here for much longer, and hopefully even for much shorter. I value the historic character of the town. I value the quality of the schools, the access to open space, the Blue Hills, access to Boston via public transportation and via bike paths. But I also like what defines a community is the people within the community. There are people here who are very passionate about Milton. They share their talents with Milton. We saw a number of people speak before us who share their skills with us. And I would like to share my skill set with Milton. I think it's a skill set that could benefit the town through the planning board. It's 25 years of this kind of work, day in and day out. It's a network of professionals across a lot of different disciplines who can help inform and advise the decisions that the planning board makes. Thank you. I ask for your support on April 27th.
Thank you. Edward, your closing statement, please.
Thank you. I was born in Milton, at Milton Hospital, which was located in Cunningham Park, one of the gems of Milton. I've lived in Milton most of my life, except for 2 years when I lived in West Africa as a teacher. My 40 years of service in the town of Milton has given me a perspective I think very few have, and working on the cultural endeavors for the town. I have an appreciation of the things we have to preserve and the things we treasure. I think that I can continue to serve the town for another 5 years, and I do know that my signature is on the plans that this Fuller Village was built. My signature is on those plans, and I'm very proud of that. And last week's Milton Times had a story about my candidacy. If you haven't read it, I think it might be interesting reading. So I'll go by this candidacy as my statements for looking for your support. And thank you very much for coming to Fuller.
Thank you. Thank you very much for coming, and good luck.
And I was charged with finding a moderator, which is really a true act of love, because as a moderator, you have to be able to think on your feet, and you never quite know what kind of hornet's nest you're going to step into. Debbie's reputation has preceded her, and I think she has done an absolutely fabulous job as being a moderator. I would like to present you with a little token of our appreciation, and I also want to thank you on behalf of the League of Women Voters